Pardon me? All opposed, what did I say? Well, we really, really love this agenda. Okay, very good, thank you. Staff reports. Oh, that wasn't, sorry. Sorry about that. David Marquardt got a hold of me today and said that he has back-to-school night for his classroom, so he will not be here tonight to give a report. So I think we can safely assume that all the teachers are at back-to-school night tonight, and that's their report. All righty. Dr. Schatz, the operational plan.
Tonight, we provide for you the first reading of our operational plan for 2015-16. I think the one thing I want to note about this year's operational plan is that, as you know, in the last couple of years, we have aligned this to the advanced ed standards for our school improvement process. But also with our new strategic plan now, you will find that in each one of the operational plan action items, you'll see the alignment with the advanced ed indicator and also the strategic initiative and the goals tied to it. So that was our effort again to bring consistency and put everything into under one umbrella. And so I don't really have any one particular specific thing to mention with regard to the plan action items, but just noting that most of it, if not all of it, relates directly to the implementation of our strategic plan and the areas of focus that each one of the departments have identified for their work this year. And so if you have any questions, I or one of the others would be more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Rebecca.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment, and I wanted to note on page 10 where it talks about the district website, the revamping of that. And I know that, and lots of us know that there's lots of great information on that website already, but some of it is a little bit difficult to find. And it's something that definitely our community members have said that they want access to more information. And some of us might say, well, it's already on there, but the hope will be that it'll be much more user-friendly. So I just wanted to highlight that and thank administration.
Great, thank you. Robin.
The only thing that I didn't notice on here, since I'm the GAC chair this year, is there any work that you want us to do on the interim side? And should that be part of the operational plan?
I wouldn't see that as work for the operational plan. I would say that's more of a GAC committee determination, and
Okay.
if there's things that come out of GAC committee, then that would just be a directive to staff to work on that.
Okay.
But I just see that as an ongoing kind of activity, daily activity. So.
Okay, thank you.
Brock, you're kind of moving around, okay. And anyone else? This is great, and you've talked about that alignment before. Let me just ask quickly, I know it's a multi-year process, but in preparation for the next evaluation and visit and everything, I would imagine that all the work you've been doing, aligning all these things, will make that process go a little quicker, a little more smoothly?
I think it'll help the process, and I also think that for the visiting team that comes in and evaluates and looks at what we're doing as a district, they're going to find that they have not been to too many places where things are so aligned. And so I think that's going to really be something that'll come out. I'll anticipate that that'll be something that'll come from that report saying, wow, look what this school district has done to align all these things and to bring clarity to, and to use the advanced ed process, because that's where that team comes from, to really look at how we're doing as a district, what are our strategic initiatives, and then, developing what are those things that we should pay more attention to maybe from an outsider's perspective. So I think this will really be something that will be pretty good for us.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Terrific. Well, thank you for providing this for us and walking us through it. I appreciate that. Administrative policy updates.
I've asked Dr. Gross to go through this one for you. There's a policy that, as you know, through the summer, last spring into the summer, we've done all sorts of reviews of different policies. And in that process, this particular policy we talked about having put together this policy because we didn't find a specific policy that covered the things that are in this policy all in one. And so we thought this would really be a good idea to put this policy together and to make it clear that what our practice is now reflected also in policy. So I'm going to let Bob talk a little bit more about how he did that and what this is about.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. What we are referring to is AP 6333, which is search policy. And as we began this conversation, each of our buildings already had practices in place that they used when it came to something like this, the search of a student's personal property. But again, we wanted to articulate this so that it was consistent across our entire district. So to help us with that, what we did is we asked the North Dakota School Boards Association for a sample policy that we could begin with. We received that, and then I worked with the secondary principals as we went through and reviewed and modified that slightly to reflect not only the practices that we have in place, but we wanted to make sure that they meet the legal requirements that were given to us by the School Boards Association. We then reviewed it with all of our principals at our August meeting so that the elementary, middle school, and high school principals all had the opportunity to see and to give feedback. So this policy, what it does is talks about when a principal has a reasonable suspicion that a student has something that is in violation of one of our policies or procedures, what they should do if they are going to search either the backpack, things like that, a vehicle, or a locker. And we just wanted to make sure that all of our principals had that clearly defined for them, that is consistent across our buildings from K all the way through high school, and that it talks about who would be present, how that should be done, and then also how we're going to record anything that is determined through that process. So I feel that this policy meets the regulations provided to us by the School Boards Association. Our principals have had the opportunity to review it, and they all know now moving forward what will be the consistent practice across our system.
Thank you. And this is not an action item for us, but just informational. Anybody have any questions or comments? John?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Gross, I'm just curious about the delineation of cell phones, and I'm glad that's in there, by the way. But what about laptops or other portable devices?
When a student uses one of the systems that we have, they sign an appropriate use form that articulates that that is the school property. They know that then the use of that could be reviewed by district employees.
If I might continue, what if it's their own personal laptop or personal property, personal handheld devices type things?
Then that would be similar to the way it's articulated here under the cell phone component.
Robin?
What kind of policies are in place for searching staff personal property?
I don't think that we have any particular specific policy in place for that, but like anything, if there was reasonable suspicion to believe that there was something that was illegal, something that would be of concern for safety of the school, the students, those types of things, that would be addressed, and probably we would consult with the law on that one too, the police, and get them involved. So when it comes to students, it's a little bit different, and I think with that case, the whole idea of doing dog searches, for example, out in a parking lot, well, there might be an adult who showed up where something's hit on in a car. Well, at that point, that's when police officers are there, and they will take over and manage that. If it's a student, then it's our issue to deal with, and then we follow our policies. And so it's a little different that way.
David?
I have a question on the bottom here where it says involvement of law enforcement. How often are law enforcement personnel involved in searches that are held in the school? And then I've got a follow-up to that too.
Not very often. Now, we do have our SROs in the building, and, SROs are part of our everyday practice within our buildings, but not very often that they're involved. Our administrators manage these things and deal with this, and if there is a law that is broken, if there's a citation that's to occur, or those types of things, then at that point, we'll bring in the law. But for the most part, these things are handled directly by administrators within the building.
In the event that something is found, drugs, for instance, is there any problem if this goes to court, that there wasn't a law enforcement officer present when the drugs were first found?
Not at all. Schools have the right, with reasonable suspicion, to go ahead and to do those kinds of investigations. Once that's found, at that point, then that's evidence that's turned over to the law when the citations and those types of things is reported to them. So, no, I think we're in good cases, in good shape with that.
Anyone else? Great, thank you for that. We are now up to the consent agenda. Paul,
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Do you want the HR addendum on there?
Yeah, we're putting that in the consent agenda, the HR addendum.
correct,
Okay, I'll second.
thank you. Motion and a second for the consent agenda. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed say no. Thank you. And since it is not 6, and this is a time-specific public hearing that we have next on the agenda, we will skip ahead to business, and at 6 o'clock, we'll go back to the public hearing. So policy monitoring, in your packet you have GP7, which was amended before. This is just the annual time at which we approve that this is indeed going to be our committee structure this year, standing committees. And EL1 and EL2, I would entertain a motion to accept all 3, and then we could have discussion if that's acceptable. John?
I move acceptance of GP7, EL1, and EL2 as presented in the packet.
Second.
Any discussion? Rebecca?
I have discussion on GP7, which is the committee structure under Communications Committee. So I have a question, actually under B means, number 1, it says work with administration in maintaining a board communications plan. I have a suggestion for some different language, but first, before I make the suggestion, I'm wondering if that language makes sense in terms of maintaining a board communications plan. Is that anything that the Communications Committee has been involved with in recent history?
I guess I would invite Dinah and/or Anne Marie to respond to that.
I mean, I guess we haven't had a formal board communication plan unless you reference what the communication plan of the Communications Committee is for any given year, which, you know, at the beginning of the year, there's discussion about what the individual committee has done. But if you've read the communication audit, there's a reference to something sort of similar in terms of the way the board communicates as a group or as individuals going forward. So I think maybe at least in the immediate future, that part of the discussion might fall under the communication plan. But I don't know what your suggestion is and whether that would better define what we have been doing, so.
Did you have a follow-up?
So my suggestion for number 1 would be to change the wording to say, work with administration to support the strategic plan, which then, within the strategic plan, communications plan would come within that.
Robin, did you have a?
Well, before Rebecca had made that recommendation, 2 years ago, when I was the chair of the Communications Committee, we were given a plan, if you will, to work on the mill levy election. And so we came up with a defined communication plan at that point. But I think and I've been communications chair in the past, that's as structured as a plan that we've had in the past, and that was upon direction of the board. But I agree with you. I think what this means is just like a marketing plan for the Communications Committee. So I think this spells out a freestanding plan, and I agree with you. I think the wording should be changed unless we do this in practice, and I think we should do this in practice. So I don't know maybe if it's the right time to change it or not.
I guess my suggestion would be, I know we're just starting out a new year with new committees that will be working out their own work plans, and the Communications Committee in particular has a big stack of recommendations from the audit to start digging into. So one way we could approach this is to ask all committees to take a periodic look at this and see during the year if this language of your own committee description still makes sense. And then maybe at the end of the year, maybe in one of our retreats, or just committee chairs can keep suggestions so that when it comes up time again next year to approve this, we can make suggestions for changes that have really evolved out of the actual work of the committee during the year. I don't know if that, rather than upfront.
That would be okay with me. I just wanted to make sure that, for example, when it says, work with administration in maintaining a board communications plan, if that is the expectation then of the communications committee and of administration to develop a communications plan, that we do it. And then, but I just want to make, wanted to open that up for conversation, because I don't, to understand and to grasp the enormous, the huge project really that is. So
Well,
I just
maybe
want to
you-
make sure that it's worded appropriately and that we understand what
Well,
we're
I think
talking
you're
about.
right. I think one does not exist now, and maybe you'll be developing one. So maybe maintaining is a little optimistic in this language here. Because you're right, I don't think there is a plan that exists that directly addresses board communication. I would guess that would be something that your committee will be digging into. Any other discussion on any of these three? There's a motion and a second to approve GP7, EL1, and EL2 as presented. Do we need a roll call on this one?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Myers,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Strand. Benson,
Yes.
Goldenberg,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Boyd.
Yes. Thank you. We will go on to board reports. I think this time we'll start over here with Jim, please.
Well, first of all, those of you that are on Planning Committee and anybody else who is looking to have a fun-filled Friday morning, planning meets at 7:30 this Friday, and you're all invited to come. The State GAC Committee is in the process of putting forward recommendations on resolutions, standing resolutions that have hit the 4-year mark. We'll be meeting sometime in the next week. They've got several different dates. They're trying one of those, I don't know, what do they call them, doodle surveys, to see if they can actually get us all in on one of these. But I want to just quickly run you through this, because part of my goal is to make sure we get to 6 o'clock today. So no. In case anybody has any strong feedback, these are the resolutions that either have to be reauthorized or will be dropped from the standing resolutions that the State School Board Association advocates for. And some of these are old and probably are going to get dropped. So it may seem funny because some of these got solved. Number 1, property tax initiated measure. We're on target to oppose anything that eliminates local property taxation in North Dakota. Number 2, federal impact aid funding, fully supporting the federal funding for federally impacted school districts. Those are primarily Grand Forks and Minot in our state. No Child Left Behind. We have a resolution that we're going to work with DPI to formally request that they develop and submit a growth model to measure annual yearly progress. My guess is that one will be left in the dust. Non-education funds to provide for safety in our schools, including SROs and health and nursing services. We've been advocating for quite a while to get separate funding out of the state for those programs because they're not directly educational related. They're more community health and safety related. That one's up for readoption. K-12 funding adequacy, I'm guessing that one will probably hit the dust, but you never know. Sales and use tax exemption for school construction supplies and materials. I think that didn't get through the legislature last time around, did it? So that'll probably be up for renewal. Curriculum content, North Dakota State School Board shall oppose any state or national effort to further define and mandate specific curriculum content. My guess is that one will get renewed. Teacher non-renewal, this is seeking a legislative change that would provide that any teacher newly hired after August 15th would be excluded from the continuous contract and would be covered under different provisions in North Dakota Century Code. We've only been working on this one since 1995. Probably will get readopted again. Number 9, removing compensation from the state law on what we have to collectively bargain for. Not eliminating collective bargaining, but just eliminating compensation as one of the items. Number 10, seeking to define a different definition for a 9th grade alternative school. I believe the rules currently state that the student must be between the ages of 16 to 21, when in fact there are some 9th graders that are under the age of 16. So we are trying to get it amended to say at least a 9th grade level or ages 16 through 21. And number 11, one that's been around since 1991, probably will be around till 2091. Eliminate the requirement to publish school board minutes in the local official newspaper if you can produce them for the public a different way. So those are the ones that GAC committee will make a recommendation on. That'll go to the full floor for a vote at our October meeting. As a general rule, not always, whatever the GAC committee recommendation is what tends to happen on the general session floor. So I don't know if anybody has questions or any specific ones that you think I should try to kill.
Madam Chair, Jim, I'm just curious about resolutions that come annually, and if they get rolled into this process, for example, the issue, the topic, the general topic of retirement funds and programs and so on,
Yep.
and others that we and others have advanced.
Good question. I should have overviewed this a little better. There are 3 ways something gets before the body at the annual School Board Association conference. One is through the GAC committee recommendation process, and school districts could submit to the GAC committee. I think they had to be in someplace in the first week of August. None were received this year. That's pretty typical in the off legislative year. They tend to surface more so when we know we have a legislative session coming up. So there were none brought forward by any school districts. The state board has the ability to put something in front of the general membership for consideration. I think there will be 2 or 3 that'll be coming forward from the state board. And then school districts who did not get them submitted for state GAC committee consideration can actually bring them to the floor themselves through a different procedure. And that happens from time to time. We've had 1 or 2 of those actually occur. So at this point in time, I'm not aware of any school district that has a resolution to put forward. I think there are going to be a couple from the state school board itself, and then obviously whatever GAC does for recommendations and how the general membership deals with them.
Thank you.
And that's it for all my reports. Unless there were more questions on that, I'm sorry.
Great, thank you. David?
Jim, the School Boards Association is supporting amending the negotiations law to eliminate compensation.
Yep,
What does that leave to negotiate?
working conditions. And there's actually, I think there's actually 4 things in state statute. I just can't remember what the other 2 are, and they all seem to be working conditions or money to me. And quite frankly, I suspect there are a lot of people at the state school board who would just soon eliminate the process altogether compensation was the one item.
Anyone else have any questions for Jim? Okay. John?
Nothing, Madam Chair.
Rebecca?
Okay, the Clara Barton, let's see, the ice cream social at Clara Barton, which is my liaison school, is September 24th from 6 to 7:30. So I'm sure we will get emails. I believe last year we all received emails asking if we would be willing to help serve ice cream. And I've heard back from everyone in regard to the communications committee. So aside from September, we will meet on the second Monday of each month at 11:30. And the September meeting needs to be rescheduled due to a conflict. So I'll let you know on that. And that's it.
Great, thank you. Jennifer?
So I attended 2 back-to-schools because I have kiddos now at Discovery and Kennedy. And really, I guess, of significance, I heard today, and perhaps we'll hear this from staff as well, that Discovery's up to 1,000 kids as of today already. So I thought that was notable information. But otherwise, it was great, and my kids are excited to be back into the routine and look forward to a new experience at middle school.
Great, thank you. We still have 4 minutes before our hearing. David?
I have nothing at this time.
Paul?
I had the opportunity today to attend the back to school with the faculty members at Davies, where I had a chance to speak briefly and see a lot of the people there, and it was a very encouraging and exciting event to see so many excited staff members who were happy to be back at school and looking forward to good things. We also had a brief meeting, kind of a preliminary to our committee, our ad hoc committee with regard to community engagement that Linda and I and Dr. Schatz started drawing up some ideas for that, and I guess we'll move forward with those at some point.
Great, thank you. Robin?
I attended the Carl Ben Eielson orientation, which was a lot of fun. Jim spoke a little bit to some of the resolutions through NDSBA. I would encourage you each to read the article in the monthly newsletter that talks about what will replace and the No Child Left Behind, NCLB. Jolynn and I will be working to contact our GAC committee members to arrange for a September meeting. Other than that, I am through.
Thank you, Robin. Dinah?
Excuse me, I was at both North and Madison this morning, my liaison schools, talking to them, introducing myself to their staff and being at their staff meeting. I attended the Ufta Taco lunch today at North also, so 2 taco salads in one day. The Fargo FPS Foundation had their, or at least I attended the first board meeting as a board member since our last board meeting. It was really interesting because they had all the financial advisors come in and update on the status of all the funds, which are very healthy and so on, but it's overwhelming for somebody on their first meeting to have 20 minutes from each of these guys telling you all about the money and stuff. It was really wow. I've toured Ed Clapp also with the foundation. Ed Clapp's Adopt a School partner is Essentia. And so there was a special day set up to have a couple of tours for foundation board members and Essentia staff, and they did that twice, and there was media coverage, which maybe you guys saw, but I also was in there, and I want to go back to school. God, aside from anything else, as we build new schools, different things evolve, and one of the things we've learned over time is that not all kids learn the same way, and not all kids can sit in rows in desks, and these desks lift up and down, so for the kids who need to stand maybe for a while or sit, and some of them have rocking chairs, and some of them have stools that you can sit on and rock on, and so I think it's really exciting as we evolve and understand the needs of kids, and that we can do things like that. I think that's it for me.
Great, thank you, Dinah, and I'll pass out my report, and I apologize that I missed the Ed Clapp grand opening, but we have a circular here, so I'll just call that my addendum. It is 6 o'clock, the time that was published for our public hearing, and it looks like we have some folks joining us, so welcome. The purpose of this public hearing is to provide input to the school board regarding the notice you received. The notice you receive is required by state law that if the valuation of our mill levy increases a certain amount, we have a public hearing. And so just to be clear, what the school mill levy is for this year is 139 mills for the general fund, which is the same as the past couple years, but the value of that has increased. We have 26.35 mills in two separate building funds, which is the same as it's been since, I believe, 1999, and 1 mill for a special assessment funds, which is to pay the special assessments on the new elementary building. So at this time, I would invite you to come to the podium and speak. It will not necessarily be a back and forth, but we will certainly receive your comments at this time. Please state your name and your address,
My
please.
name is Francesco Valente. I live in Island Park, around here, not too far. I just have a question. What do you people did with the money that Bismarck gave you?
That's an excellent question. That is a portion of what we pay, and property taxes are
I
another portion.
understand was the Bismarck gave you the money in order not to increase the property taxes. Now, if the government gave you money, you want to give extra money to the union, which represent a lot of people are here, it doesn't make any sense. Then the government give you any money, might as well they don't give you anything. I complain because I'm on fixed income, and I have a right on that. And I want to know, where did the money go? Who's going to get the money? How many people?
Are you referring to the,
Yeah. You take the money, what do you do with the money?
we'll actually just be receiving input, but you have some very pointed
I'd like
questions.
to know where you put it. You put it in your pocket, you give it to somebody else, what?
Paul?
I think it probably deserves some kind of an answer, because we spend about 8 months out of the year going through the budget and figuring out where that money's gonna go that you're talking about. And we have meetings, many of them are early in the morning, some of them are late in the afternoon, quite a few during the evening, where we talk about where the funds that the school district collects, where those will go. So it isn't like tonight, we decided where that money should go.
You didn't make a decision yet. You
Yeah,
still
but
want the money. You want
haven't-
the money from us, but you didn't make a decision where the money is going to go.
Yeah,
This
actually,
just
we
doesn't
have,
make too much
we have made
sense.
quite a few
Make sense
decisions.
to you?
Sir?
No.
All of that information is available to you. We can't do a back and forth right here. At the break, I can provide you with some documents as to where that is, but I'll need to get input from the rest of the folks who are here.
Not a problem.
We can get you that information though, sir.
Hi, my name's Charles Renville. I live at 2602 Northwood Drive. My kids have been going to school in Fargo. They've been through Longfellow, Washington, and McKinley. But I have concerns about this too. It's like, when do us residents of Fargo ever own our homes? We're always paying property tax. I hope I live another 30 years. So let's just say I'm paying the $6,000 a year in your proposed property tax increase for the next 30 years. I'll pay more in taxes than I did for my house originally. I think this is a serious amount of money. And my question is, when does it stop? When is enough enough? Fargo has built hundreds and hundreds of homes over the last few years. Each of those are in more revenue for you guys, and yet you're asking for another 10%. I think that's just way too much. And I don't see the outcome either. And I have great concerns when I see people from the school board say, oh, kids need desks that go up and down and rocking chairs and stuff like that. Most of the jobs in the world, you don't get that. You're told to show up on time, you work hard, and you get your just deserves. Not a cradle-to-grave society. I don't want that. And I work in the military. But I do not want that. And I don't want that for my kids. It's our income, and I think enough is enough. It's time to let us, and I look across the board, and I don't see any conservative people up here. I don't. I see everyone up there is almost a leftist. And I think that's an ideologue that we're outnumbered. And I've had issues with Dr. Shah, where he's sided with stuff against my kids, you know, and it's just like, it's a leftist agenda, and I'm tired of the money being spent for a radical agenda. And it's time to cut it back. I think a straight across the board, 10% cut is the way to go. That's what I think.
Thank you, sir. And let me just remind you that this hearing is, please stay focused, your
Yeah.
comments focused on the mill
Yeah.
levy issue in front of us.
Well, my name is Dwayne Ehrman. My wife and I are both retired folks. And we moved here a few years back. But, you know, if you're going to jack our property tax up, you're going to put us right out of we're still making house payments. Our taxes are going to just go out the roof, and we're going to have to go someplace else, that's all, because, and another thing, how much of this money is going to go for all these free stuff for these people that they keep bringing into North Dakota? How much is that going to be for free? That's going to go to these kids that go to school. There's already a bunch of money that people just dish out for nothing, for free stuff. And so, you know, I'm gonna start looking at, is this gonna be on a vote on a city ballot, or is it already run through?
This is a public hearing accepting input into the mill levy, which is the same as last year's levy. It's just that the valuation of properties in Fargo has increased, so we are required to hold this hearing, but yes.
But there'll be a vote on it to the public, right?
The public does not vote on the school board budget. The public votes on school board members.
Oh, well, good luck, guys.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, I'm Sandy Lavelle Adelson. I live at 1802 19th Street South. I feel sorry for you guys, because I know it's mostly older people here, so we're all wanting what we want, and that's to not have our taxes raised anymore. I got a divorce this year, and I got the house, but I don't think I'll be able to stay in it if my taxes keep going up. They already raised the value of my house this year, and now we want another 10%, and that's like $5,000 a year for me. I work at Sanford, and I got a 1% raise this year, and they give you, you know, a 1 to 3% depending on your boss. They get to pick it. So it's really hard to make it stretch that far, and my heart's breaking for all the kids out there that need everything too. So I'm kind of at I don't know what to tell you. It hurts everybody. I mean, money's tough right now. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Mavis Schoen. We live at 1301 Broadway. We've been there 44 years this year. Our kids went through the schools on the north side. I too am concerned about the raising of the tax. My husband is no longer able to work due to a stroke. We are living on Social Security. Our taxes go up. If we're lucky, we might get a cost of living increase on Social Security, but the government's in trouble too. We don't know, and we actually right now we're looking to probably having to sell our house because of our taxes. And as she said, it just keeps going up. There's no end to it. One of the questions that I had when I read this letter, and perhaps I'm not reading it correctly, but you're asking to raise or remove the cap on the mill levy. Is there a proposed cap you're looking at, or do you just want free rein to spend like you had before the city voted to put the cap on the mill levy?
That is not an issue that's in front of the voters now, but one that we are certainly considering. But the discussion thus far has been to cap it where we are at 139 mills. We have not raised our mill levy for the last 2 or 3 years. It is the assessed valuation that Fargo is a growing community and the valuation of property is increasing. And I understand that that makes it difficult, especially for fixed incomes, but we are not asking for an increased mill levy.
So perhaps I'm misunderstanding what you're saying then, because to me, if valuation of properties are increasing, it would seem like your percentage at this point would still stay the same. So if my property value went up $50,000, you'll get the increased mill levy based on that value. Is that not correct?
At this point, it's tied to valuation, but after this year, our dollars, unless we get voter approval down the road to tie that valuation increase with our mill levy, the dollars will be frozen. So at this point, at least until we go back to the voters and get approval, the school district's portion of your taxes will be frozen at this year's level. So the valuation will cause all the other taxes to go up, but the school districts will be frozen.
And so with all the increased homes being built, that still won't give enough
We won't,
for-
we won't get an increase for that. The other political subdivisions, the city and the county and the parks will, but the school district will not.
How, and maybe I just don't get the way it works, but if they're building in the city and they have kids going to school, why wouldn't you benefit from those homes being built?
That's something that the state legislature put out, that in order for us to see the value of our mill levy increase along with everybody else's, we have to get voter approval. So that's down the road a ways.
Even on new homes being built?
Correct.
Really? That's amazing. Thank you for answering my questions.
Welcome.
Mike Vandrovic, 2808 39.5 Avenue South, Fargo. Been a resident of Fargo about 25 years. I got the letter like most other residents. I was surprised when I saw the 9.23% increase. I was shocked, in fact. I mean, most people get 1, 2, 3% a year for a increase in their wages, and I seen the 9.23. I did visit with Brock. He explained to me that it wasn't really a 9.23% like you would think when you first saw it, because of the property values were going up. Mine had a substantial jump this year too. In fact, I think every 4 years I get a pretty good jump from my value of my house. I asked him 2 questions, so as a concerned resident, I'm concerned about the number of new immigrants coming in, and right away I asked him, I said, is the cost of the school system, is it because of the new wave of immigrants that's coming in? I asked him, what percentage of the students in the Fargo school system are reflective of the other 3 other cities in North Dakota? He wasn't able to give me an answer, so I was hoping maybe somebody here could give that answer today.
Actually, we had another conversation earlier this afternoon, and Dr. Schatz, we brought him in to answer that, and I guess I would ask him to give the same answer here. It was kind of addressed the whole question.
Good evening. To answer your question directly, 10% of our overall student population is what we would consider our ELL population. So out of 11,000 students, approximately 1,000 students are served through ELL services. Sir, I'll answer the gentleman's question, and please, the decorum of our meeting, we would like to keep, be positive, and so please, let's not be yelling from the crowd. Yeah. ELL would be English language learners, okay? And that's the category in which they are classified. Federal and state laws mandate that if students show up on our doorstep, we must educate them. So it is not our choice and our process, anything that we do, which brings these students to us. And so they are refugees that are resettled in our community through other agencies of which we don't have control. And so because of those federal and state mandates, we must educate. And when they show up, that's what we do. So it's about 1,000 students. Does that add additional costs to our overall general expenditures? It does, just like it does for any other student that might show up to us out of the 11,000 students that we have. ELL programming is underfunded by the state. It's a state mandate. It's an unfunded, underfunded state mandate. And so we do have to pick up those costs. Fargo is the main refugee resettlement region for North Dakota. And so Fargo, West Fargo, and particularly Grand Forks are the 3 cities that really have the most when it comes to refugee resettlement.
Okay, so you have no input on that, neither does the city of Fargo, neither does the state of North Dakota. It's a federal mandate, is that what I'm hearing?
That's right.
That's correct. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Would anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir. Please state your name and your address, please.
My name is David Joyce. I live at 901 North 31st Street.
Thank you.
And I got this letter, and I went to my neighbors. And I was the only one on my block that received this letter. And I'm looking at this group we've got here of what, 25 people? What a poor turnout. Now, don't you think maybe you should have sent these out some way to where you made sure that there was a little better attendance? Maybe return receipt requested to make sure that they got it? Because I could have made a list on the back of here, or I could recite a list of people that said, I've never seen this letter.
Jim?
The only people that got the letter would be people that either built new property in the city in the last year or had their home value reassessed and it increased in the last year. If your property didn't get reassessed, you effectively will have a 1 mil increase, which is the special assessment mill, and that's it. So that's why your neighbors didn't get it. Your property probably got reassessed,
Okay,
and
now I
theirs
got a
didn't.
response to that. I live over by Madison School. When I called the city, you know who they compared me to for my house? Because I have a little bigger house than my neighbors? Beaumont Lakes. I said, how can you compare me to Beaumont Lakes? To raise my taxes.
Well,
And
sir,
then they-
there's actually
I
a
know.
hearing, at City Commission, I don't know when it is, but if you have an issue to take up with the assessment of your home.
When you talk to Hushka, though, it's just like talking to a
We
brick.
can't help you with the assessment process, but there is a process that, at the city, but that's nothing that we control.
Second question, are all you people getting taxpayer dollars for income?
The pay to a school board member has been the same for the last several years, which is $12,000 a year. Next. Would anyone else wish to speak?
I got one more thing I forgot.
Sir, let me just see if anyone else, you've already spoken. Would anyone else wish to speak tonight? Sir, please, if you wish to speak, please come to the podium. Last call, if anyone would like to speak, otherwise the hearing will be closed.
I do. I got one more thing.
All right.
One other thing I forgot to talk about is, that, the $3,000 that you're getting already. And that's sort of a myth, because when I registered my kid at North yesterday, the end total is about $500 in checks I had to write for football and other extracurricular activity. And that's for the fall session. Now we're rolling to spring. So how much are we actually paying for these kids as residents to go to school? It's not the set amount that you guys are saying. You're hiding fees other way and saying you're paying with everything for property tax. And that's just a myth. And I just think it's enough. These people deserve the right to own their homes in the end. And if you pay 30 years of a mortgage, there should be an end to the taxes.
Okay, you're now talking fees for football, which is not relevant to the taxes.
But it's part of going to school, and a part of the property tax.
This is a mill levy tax hearing, sir.
Yes. And it's all part of the big picture. It's part of the puzzle that each of us are bearing.
Thank you. We've heard
So-
your input on the mill levy portion.
no.
Would anyone else wish to address, that has not spoken yet, that wishes to address the mill levy issue at hand? Please state your name, sir.
I
Thank you.
run Fargo Bakery over on 501 North University.
Thank you.
And we own a lot of property and employ 220 people. And our question is, if we have $100,000 in property tax, is it going to be $109,000? Is that what that 9.3 meant?
This is simply to state that the value of the, excuse me, the value of the school district's mills, the property value has increased by that much.
Right. So
The actual property value of the city and county portion increased by about 12%, because part of Fargo is not in the Fargo School District.
Are we gonna assume 9.3% more than we paid last year? Is that what we should figure?
For some of the properties in town which had increased valuation.
We're one. We're one of them, I'm sure. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you for your input, and this closes the public hearing. If you have another comment, but we are not answering questions at this point, we will meet you during the break if there's specific documents that you would like from the business office. The public hearing is closed. Thank you. We will be taking a break at 6:30, or actually, we'll probably be done by 6:30, and I would be happy to answer any questions outside of the meeting after that. You've received my president's report. Any other reports at this time? Okay. Our next board meeting is September 8th, and we are now at debriefing. Paul?
I'd just like to apologize if anyone felt that I was answering more than I needed to at that point. Sometimes it's hard. You know, you feel you need to explain what's going on. But I do have a couple of questions. Did we get a copy of this letter? To our email? Okay. Okay. I have to confess, I did not see it.
No, it came, well, some of us got a copy in the U.S. Postal Service.
Right.
But we all had an email copy about a week ago. It came out to us.
Okay. I apologize because I didn't see that. But did it say in the letter
Excuse me, hang on. Could you please take this outside of the meeting room? We will be done shortly. Thank you.
And just for a point of information, because I didn't see it, and I apologize for that, did it say that their taxes were being raised by 9-point-something%?
I have a copy of it here, which we can.
I mean, does it make it sound like we're raising the taxes by 9-point-something%? Because
bad wording.
that'd be a reasonable misunderstanding, I think.
Is
And
this wording that is specified by state statute, Brock?
Yeah, members of the board, Madam President, members of the board, the statute's very prescriptive of what information we have to give and how we word it. And it would be my thought that, as you recall, we've done this 3 of the last 4 years. This is the largest increase, and it is very prescriptive. It would be my thought going forward, if we continue to be in the zero mill levy increase position, that we would secure some additional legal advice as to what additional information we could put in the letter. We've not done that. We've run a very similar letter to every other district and taxing entity to be very precise with what the law says we need to do, much like the ad itself that goes out. So yes, it's prescriptive, and yes, it could be confusing. And those are the conversations I've had with people as they've called. But I think we need to take care not to overstep what we put in it either, so that it gives the right information.
Well, just to follow up on that, Linda, because, you know, it says a public hearing to consider increasing the mill levy by 9.23%. I don't believe we increased the mill levy. So I don't care if that's prescriptive or not. It's simply not true. I'd have been agitated if I were out.
Right, right. Jeff, did you have something you were going to say? Oh. Yes, and public hearings are awkward because it's not it's not an ideal, or is it even much of an opportunity for us to clarify. If you run it strictly as a public hearing, you just don't comment at all. It does seem unfair to not answer questions. So the gentleman, if you could just give him a copy of the budget and maybe just the pie chart, that would be helpful, I think. Anyone else have any comments? Anyone else? Yes, Jennifer.
Is there any way that we can send a follow-up letter for clarification?
I don't know if statute really speaks to that, and we could send out are you talking about a letter that would explain this better?
Well, partly explain it, and also, it does say it's increasing by. So can we clarify that for folks so that it is more clear? Because I have to say, even when I read it, I thought the same thing.
Yeah. Brock, you were diving for the,
Well, I can't imagine that the state law prohibits us from sending a letter.
Yeah, members of the board, Madam President, members of the board, I would agree, it doesn't prohibit us from doing that, and we had some conversations as the administration about, communicating just what you said, Linda, that it's about property tax valuation increase, that the district is not increasing taxes with the exception of the 1 mil, which we have all talked about is really the equivalent of $4.50 per 100,000, so it's very minimal. I thought the article that the forum ran was very informative. I thought that Mike Montplaisir from the county gave a very informative description of exactly how it lays out and what it means. So something of that nature, I think, is beneficial, and if people saw that, I think there was a better understanding. So I guess we would operate at your will. If you'd like us to craft something, get it reviewed by legal, and send that out, it's something we certainly would take your directive on.
Jim?
I'm not against having this conversation, but it sure doesn't seem like it belongs in debriefing.
Where would you suggest?
Someplace in a business section, so we could take action if we want to. So maybe in our next board meeting, we put it there for discussion?
I guess I would suggest that we will take up this topic at governance, and if that ends up coming onto as an agenda item for our next business meeting, that we'll do that. Jennifer?
We can't give direction under this part of our agenda. If we were to say, we would like administration to do this, to draft a letter?
At least from the day debriefing came onto our agenda, it was a chance for us to reflect on how this meeting ran. And should we have done something different in running this meeting? Not discussing in-depth topics, but.
Our
But-
meeting
I'm
is
just saying.
actually over.
Well, and I would just add, no, yeah, we're.
Oh,
and
that's right. Yeah.
I would also
Yeah,
add that we were supposed to do the public hearing before business, but we moved it around. I don't know if that matters, but business could have come after so that we could have taken some action.
John?
Madam Chair, I would, we are not done with the budgeting process, and we have at some point to formalize the final budget. I would say if it goes anywhere, we take the discussion back to planning, see if there's any action or recommendations or not that would come from planning relative to the budgeting process. And because we certainly got some feedback, and I think that people deserve to know that we've heard them. I'm not sure anything will change or not, but there is a vehicle, because we haven't formalized our final budget at all until October. So there are vehicles in place to vet this feedback relative to what we've heard, and the letter and the statute especially.
Dinah?
Sorry, I don't want to belabor the point. I'm okay with planning, governance, both, either discussing this further and having recommendations. But I think the thing that, John's right, we heard input, and whether we take that input to adjust the budget is one piece, but the piece that I think is more concerning is the wording of the letter and the misunderstanding that the folks had. Now, I'm not saying that they don't have a right to complain about raised taxes, absolutely. But the appearance of this is that it's the fault of the school district that we are raising our mill levy by 9.whatever%, and that is misinformation. Their taxes may be going up that, but that's not what we have done to make it happen. And I think the discussion is two different things. Do we take the input and adjust the budget is one question, but how do we rectify so that people understand the true direction and the way this came about? And maybe, I know perhaps not all these people readily go to our website, but perhaps that's a simple way of putting something on the website. The article that Brock referenced that was a good, that might be just a starting point to help people who might be out there, and that's just, anyway.
Well,
Linda?
oh,
can I-
sorry.
I'm with Dinah. I mean, I know this is not on the agenda, but we're still in an open meeting. There is some timeliness that needs to be considered in this, because obviously there's a lot of media here tonight, and we need to preempt some of this with an actual factual explanation of what happened and somehow mitigate some of those concerns up front. At least that's one.
Any other thoughts? Rebecca?
How many letters went out?
Approximately 7,300.
I think, you know, in the grand scheme of things, and having been to many, many public hearings, I think what we heard tonight is some pretty passionate testimony from a percentage of folks who received those letters. And I agree, clarification would be helpful. I guess I would ask our committee chairs, Rebecca with communications and Jim with planning, if there is a piece of this that you feel it's important to bring up in your committee that can come back to the board with some recommendations. I would appreciate that. John?
Madam Chair, members of the board, you know, the public, we got informed from the city that they had in the district properties within the city limits, because not all of the Fargo School District is in the Fargo city, but we had an average, if I recall, of 9-something% valuation increase. The city had an average of a 12% increase across the board in the city. And it's an average. Some people, I remember hearing from some folks that they had 25 to 40% increases. They were just livid. But other people probably had just a little tiny increase, or not necessarily a 9% or more. So there really is a need for a communication to the public here. And the way this statute, if it's requiring us to send a letter out and making it sound like every single every property that got a valuation increase got the same increase, that's not at all the case either. And of course, we don't have assessors. The city does the assessment. Our job is to balance the mill levy to the assessments and valuations, of course. And then, of course, we've got a frozen budget going forward. So, but there's I think, a need for the public to understand that, and I don't know what the requirements of this communication to them are, but it's certainly not across the board. Everybody got that exact same valuation increase assessed to them at all.
Paul?
Trying to stick to the same debriefing topic, because I do respect that and understand that. And I think we're debriefing here because we just had a open meeting where people were able to come in and comment, and it affected our meeting, and, you know, people saying things that, you know, we're sensitive to. So just to comment a little bit farther on that, I think what's fascinating here is that in a sentence or two, we've attempted to apparently explain some things about taxes that really would have perhaps required a paragraph or two, because when someone says, well, you're getting a 9% increase, my first question would be is that annually? No. These houses haven't been reassessed for some time. That's why they're getting a 9% increase, if that's what the story is. And item number two, it makes it sound like the mill levy is increasing. The mill levy is only increasing fractionally, as Brock says, perhaps $4 to $10 a year for a homeowner. So there's just so much that didn't get explained that created some excitement that we need to move on that. I mean, we need to respond to that, not in panic, but I mean, we need to tell people that it's not just a case of, oh, by the way, everybody's taxes are going up 9% due to us, because it's not due to us. We don't have assessors. We don't check the valuation of homes. We don't do that. And I think you need to, you know, I can't imagine that the state says, no, you need to mislead them.
Rebecca?
You asked if, you talked about planning and communications, taking this and visiting about it. in our committees, and I'd be happy to do that with the Communications Committee. We'll be meeting, at some point in September. And there are many items, of course, that we need to take under consideration. And like Paul, you said, we all have this very complex issue. So the trick, not really trick, I don't mean it that way, but is to try to figure out how to explain some of these very important items in a manner that is understandable. So that is difficult, but I think some time needs to be taken to try to figure out how we can do that and what the appropriate means of communication that is, whether that's sending letters out to the same individuals that we sent them to before or some other manner. But I'd be happy to have the Communications Committee address that.
Great, thank you. Anybody else have any items for debriefing? Thank you. We're adjourned.